have a feeling we're probably not going to be able to make it through the whole data meeting since we had the issues this morning and everything. So we'll get through what we can, and if we can't, that's okay. So if you'll notice over there, I put each part of the protocol with it, so that way you know kind of where we are and you can kind of follow along with what we're doing. I do have a timer set for all of those things, so I just want to make sure that you knew where we were with that. Okay, so here's one of the protocols, is that novice teachers speak first. So you would be our novice teacher, right? Your second year? Okay, so you speak first when we start doing stuff. Well, and the reason for that is you can share what you do have, and then we'll kind of add on to that stuff. So it's not anything that's, that's just part of the protocol. So don't worry, you'll be fine. It's not anything you don't. Yeah. It's not anything you don't already know. So you're good. And then veteran teachers kind of add on, and we all clarify, and we get more work with the process. So welcome to our weekly data meeting. We're kind of starting the process. We're trying to do it every other week-ish, just to, we've been through the process once. It was incredibly helpful. Like, I just feel like we all understood it better. Everybody walked away with, like, a plan and felt good about it and was like, okay, I feel good. I can reteach, like, right now. So we'll go ahead and go through that. So before we do that, does anybody have any type of celebrations or anything when it comes to any of this that we've done so far? At least, like, sitting down and doing the exemplar together, playing it out. What kind of celebrations do you guys have for this?
Okay, I guess I can say that my students are labeling their information more when they do their work. They're showing it. They're not just picking numbers and doing.
Funny you say that. We noticed that yesterday.
Oh,
we noticed that looking through your work, we were like, I like how this class labels everything. So that
because
was
on the
really
homework,
good.
I've been taking points off on blooms.
Yeah.
And the parents are like, what do you mean I didn't do it in the homework? I helped. Well, it wasn't complete how I had specified. I have a poster and it's a picture.
Yeah.
I've been sending a lot of pictures of all the posters I have in my classroom.
Oh, that's
So
good.
that's
That's really
helpful.
helpful. That is really helpful. I love it.
Some of my parents were very concerned.
Well, but that helps them.
They
That's
are
excellent.
doing not what they
That's
need
excellent.
to all the way, and
It's a process.
I needed to do more of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't at that level.
That's nice.
Jimmy, do you have any celebrations?
Celebrations. Ooh, that's interesting. Well, I guess they are restating the question more. Some of the students are still struggling
That's
with
good.
how to restate the question, and so I talked to Wilson about that. Also, that some of my students were asking about how, and she said they don't know how to do that. She said, okay, tell them that it's the same thing that they do in my class for morning work.
Mhm.
And just transfer it over to math,
Exactly.
and then it's the same thing.
That's
So
awesome.
we've been working on that as well. That what you do in reading also cross over what you do in math. It's cross curricular. And they're like, what does that mean? So I had to go.
Let's talk about that. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move into our exemplar. We're going to be focusing on 4.4H today, solving with fluency 1 and 2-step problems involving multiplication and division, including interpreting the remainder. And then we're going to be using the DOL from Tuesday, right? That's which one you guys did?
Yes.
Okay, so looking at the standard right now, since it's up there on the chart, and looking at our know and show chart, what do the kids need to know and be able to do in order to know that they have actually shown mastery on that standard?
What's on
That
the
standard
list?
right there, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, what do you feel like needs to be on there?
That needs to be added.
Well, for now that we've taught it, maybe if there's anything you think needs to be added, or if you feel like there's anything that really you felt like you spent more time on, maybe you spent more time on the extra information, like adding in the explanations and whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set our timer for 8 minutes. We're going to kind of talk about what we see there. And if there's anything that we think needs to be added.
So things that they'll need to know to be able to do this team.
Mm-hmm.
To
Okay. Okay. Do you guys have your teacher standard, your teacher exemplar?
Here it is right here.
Okay. So looking at the teacher exemplar, look it over again real quick before we jump into the student work. notice that there is the statement, Eric needs blank cases to hold all of the action figures. I do notice in our teacher exemplar that there is the model drawing, there's the forgiving method on here. 19 remainder 6, there's the long division, which is the standard algorithm, and then of course there's a place there for checking the problem. There's also a section for the estimating of compatible numbers. So looking at the student high, I picked 2 from each class, or 1 from each class, so you've got 2 samples of high work, and we made copies of it so you guys can write on it. This is where you might want a colored pen, because a colored pen is going to be different than what that pencil is, because it's kind of hard to see. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys about 1 minute to look at the student exemplar, and I want you to notice, how does it compare to the teacher exemplar? Compare the two, the teacher and the student exemplar, looking at all those. And you can write all over your papers if you feel like it's missing something or whatever.
They're both utilizing the tic-tac-toe chart for their multiplication facts, which is not on the teacher exemplar, but it is something that we reinforce for the kids to do so that they have that to the side already, so they don't, while they're dividing, they don't have to process the multiplication side.
Okay.
They have They also have the model drawing, like the teacher exemplar. One does, one does not. So, but they both explain why the answer is 20 and that they needed to add 1 to the quotient. So they're explaining that they understand interpreting the remainder on this particular problem.
Okay, so is there any gap that you see that they're doing that we did, or they're not doing that we did? The only thing I see on that.
One checked their work, one did not.
Oh yeah, I see that.
One checked their work, one did not, and one has the model drawing and one does not.
I did notice that. But I did notice they both received the question. They both used one of the methods. One did the forgiving, one did the standard. So do you think that maybe we would have needed to add the? Oh, we did have a tic-tac-toe chart.
Yeah, it's just really small.
Oh.
Okay. I was saying, yeah, but it's there. It's there. Okay, so I don't think that there's anything else that this exemplar offers that ours does not. These are pretty good student examples. I mean, yes, they may not have had every single part to it, but they still got the answer correct, and it looks like they knew what they were doing with this one. Okay, so what we're going to do now is move into the see the gap. We got done with the other one a little bit sooner than anticipated, which is good. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the medium and low samples. We're going to try to see if we can notice trends.
Oh, here are yours.
Okay, this first stack I'm handing is the mediums. So pass those down. I put it on the top. I put an M and a W for those. I mean a W, that's for you. You did that one.
Oh, yes,
There's
I
the
know
M's.
who's on there.
Here's the lows. I figured that out later. It took me a minute because I saw the H's on
See,
this.
I
and
had
it
to
said-
ask her.
Well, I saw the H's and I thought, oh, are these the high samples? I think this was not a high sample. There's an H on it.
Hawkins
then-
and Wilson.
And then if I was a little quicker with it, I would have noticed that that's not what you were doing at all. You were putting teacher.
Because there is a difference between my homeroom and hers. So
You're like, I want to make sure I take note of that.
It is true.
It's-
You
it's
do
part
things
of-
differently with different
yeah,
classes.
Yeah, so you'll know that
because the dynamics of the classes is different as well. It's not just where their academic levels are.
Yeah,
It's the class
exactly.
dynamic.
Exactly. All right, so we have 5 minutes to see the gap. What we're going to do is we're going to take 2 minutes of the 5 minutes to kind of analyze what we see here in the mediums and the lows, and we want to see if we can notice any kind of key gaps in there. So use your colored pen to kind of write all over it and just what you notice, what you see on there. All right, so let's go ahead and look at these. And what do we see the key difference is between our other student work versus our student exemplar and our teacher exemplar? Where do we think those gaps are?
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It takes a while to analyze.
I know.
You're just fine.
Can you repeat the question?
Well, where do we think the key gaps are with this versus our student exemplar, like the one that shows the work we want to see?
If they don't know how to divide, they get the math facts correct, did the model drawing but not in the strip diagram, and didn't do the add one to the quotient because they didn't label one of the boxes correctly on their model drawing. Should have been a 6 on one of them for the remainder. That might have made them more confused based on how the model drawing on the teacher model is.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, what key gaps did you notice?
On what I noticed for gaps, well, on the mediums, they didn't complete the division process, so they were missing the answer, but they have the tic-tac-toe chart, they have the visual. But
On the lows or the mediums?
That was on the mediums. These, he did long division, but he did not finish. There is no quotient written up here. He did not add up the groups. He did not put the remainders. but he understands, he just didn't complete. But this particular student requires extra time. He's not a low student, but it takes him a long time to process.
Processing long, yeah.
With this particular student here, the visual that they chose to draw, they didn't count their cases, and their last case has 8 instead of 6.
Yeah.
They have 20 cases.
They have 20 cases. That's interesting.
That's what I count.
And they didn't count their cases.
Uh-huh.
If they'd done that, they would have been okay.
So it's just, taking the time to pay attention to the work that you took the time to do.
I felt like looking at the mediums, I felt like they both did it right because his remainder's here. He just didn't pull it up.
He didn't pull it up. He
Right.
didn't have the visual.
And I think
to
they
look
just
at.
don't know what to do with it. So if you're looking at the standard, I think they just don't understand that second part, including interpreting the remainder. So I think the mediums, their gap is just including interpreting the remainder, and they have the rest of that right. I think with the other ones, the lows, theirs is just all of it all together. They're missing with the calculations, and they're getting forgiving and algorithm confused.
Yeah, this particular.
You notice that too?
Because the multiplication is there, but he is confusing the forgiven with the standard because it's set up for standard, but the process that he did was forgiving. And so since he's mixing up the two, the groups aren't there on the side for him to add up.
No, I noticed that. Okay, so we're going to do a part that's called Name It, Punch It. We're going to name what it is, and we're going to stamp it out. We're going to try to get rid of this misconception or this area that we, where our key area to reteach is. We need to figure out what that is and where we need to go with that. We have 2 minutes for this portion. I will tell you this. I've already started the timer, but what I noticed is this. When I did the calculations of all the students, 15 of them were high, so they all got it correct out of a total of 66 students. 24 of them got it mostly correct. They mostly just didn't know how to interpret the remainder. So 39 of them got that first part correct. 39 out of the 66. So that's 60% of the kids, or 59% of the kids, that actually know how to do that first part of it. So that's good knowing, because then you think, oh my gosh, this many kids got it wrong, because they did. But if you think about it, these actually got that first part correct. These kids are the ones that didn't get any of it correct. So looking at that, what do you think we need to reteach? Where do we think the area of reteach needs to be? Based on this, I think I know where the reteach needs to be.
Based on these samples that we're looking at for the lows, the reteaching for them in particular, because I know that they struggle with standard, is that because we've been going back and forth and I've been focusing more on standard, I need to reteach the forgiving method.
Basic.
Because they really struggle with standard, but they have forgotten the forgiving method because they're merging the two.
Okay, so looking at that and looking at our numbers, that's not the majority of the kids. So for our reteach for the whole class, what do you think we need to focus on?
Oh, we're interpreting
Remainder. Okay, so for whole class reteach, interpreting the remainder, and then with the lows, we'll come back to them in just a minute. So, so I think a lot of it also is partially understanding what the question's even asking for, because I think if it's asking for how many full cases are there, well, there's 19 full cases. I think that's part of them understanding, well, what are we looking for? Are we looking for full cases? Are we looking for partial cases? Are we looking for just how many cases total are we going to need? So I'm not doing very well on my time. I keep going over time. All right, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to plan the reteach. Right here are the reteaching structures that were given to us. There's 2 different kinds. There's option 1 and option 2. We need to decide if it needs to be option 1, which is the guided discourse. That's going to be when some of the students are struggling, when it's less than 50% of them struggling, if it's a trending error. If it's most of the kids struggling, we want to show the students how by modeling. What do you guys think we need to?
Well, if we're looking at the percentages with medium and low, then it's most.
I think we need to model, for sure.
They need more modeling and then the gradual release.
Okay. Okay, so what we're gonna do is at the bottom of. Did you make blank ones of that? Oh, I did. Sorry. Okay, here is our question. We're gonna do a reteach, and what we're gonna do is you guys are gonna write a script. So am I. I'm writing the script as well. And what we'll do is we're gonna spend a few minutes writing on our script of how we're gonna reteach this, and we're gonna follow the model here where it says model precisely the thinking when moving through a specific task. So we're actually writing down what we're going to say.
Okay.
Now you're not gonna actually follow your own script probably. I mean, you may want to just so that way you don't forget something. But then at least you have a plan in mind, and you already kind of know. Okay, I need to make sure I talk about this. I need to make sure I talk about this. So then we're going to narrow the focus to precisely the thinking the students are struggling with, because then that frees their mind, just like I said, it frees their mind to focus on only that component. So we need to think about only what we're doing with that remainder. So that's how we're going to write our script, because we don't need to solve the whole problem. They all knew how to do that. Not all, but
Majority.
60% of them knew what to do with that. And even the low kids, they're going to need to know how to do this. So if we can get them at least interpreting, and doing that, I think we can hit up the low kids in something else in a different time, during intervention and whatever. I say use our intervention for some of this reteaching time because it's stuff they're going to need to know anyways. So here's a blank sheet, so that way you've got the problem at the top, and then you've got space at the bottom, so you can kind of start writing out your reteach. And then we're going to discuss it and practice ours together, because as we're each talking, I might hear something and think, oh, I like that. I need to add that to my script. I didn't think about that. So, 4 heads are better than 1, so we can at least go through that together. So I'm going to start the timer now for you guys to start writing out your scripts. Okay, I'm going to cut the time just because we're short on time. We still need to go through our scripts. The good part is we're going to go through it together, so as we hear stuff, we can add to it. I just want to make sure we have less time to go through it together, so we're going to have to really cut it short. We're going to have to do it very briefly, and then we'll know where we need to work on our next data meeting and where we can kind of, work through this process together. So is there anybody that wants to share their script briefly? Literally briefly.
Yes. The whole thing briefly?
Yeah, just kind of your thought process, and then as we hear stuff, we can add on,
There's
just
a
for the
lot.
sake of time. Yeah, there's
There's
a lot.
to add on. I didn't get to the specifics of it because I didn't know if we were starting from the very beginning. As read the problem aloud.
No, that's fine.
Is that fine?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I said, read the problem out loud. Say, let's start by creating a complete sentence that answers the question being asked. Reread the question. Then say, Eric needs blank cases to hold all his action figures and also write on the board. Now let's do a model drawing labeling all the information given to us and say we have a total of 158 action figures that should be represented by our strip diagram. So you represent the total in the strip diagram on the top, and that's where I left off because I was having a hard time.
That's okay. No, and I did it like a model, like as if I was not a model, think aloud. I said, okay, so I'm actually doing like what the kids are thinking, and you can do that like on the camera. Sometimes it's helpful to sit down and just work it out as if you're the student.
And that's kind of how I worded mine.
Okay, yeah, because I thought if Eric has 158 action figures, how many cases does he need? And then I think, okay, wait, they need to know total, so we need to make total cases. You know what I mean? So maybe if we did that way, and I think it's what you're doing, so that way the kids can go, okay, so I'm not crazy thinking that. When they hear you're thinking as if you were the student.
Well, yeah, that's how
just kind of like pretend like they're not in the room and you thinking out loud.
I know.
So,
like
after reading the question, it's like, so I'm gonna restate the question first, so I know what I'm looking for. Restate the question. So I'm solving for cases, and I have to include all the action figures. I can't leave any out. Now I need my model drawing. I have 158 figures. Each case holds 8 figures, and it was important to me that I noticed as I was going through it with the kids that labels. So even when they set up the division problem, they don't understand what the quotient represents. They don't understand what the remainder represents, and that those are 2 different labels. So as the week has progressed, I'm like, guys, what does that quotient represent? And they're like, I was like, okay, what are we solving for? We're solving for cases. So this is the cases. What is the remainder? Well, the dividend is the action figures. So everything underneath is action figures. So let's write that label out there.
You just said like 7 math words that if they're not strong, they'd be like, I don't.
Oh yeah, I use the.
No, I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do because then they're going to be seeing those and they're going to need to know that. Okay, so for sake of time, and I'm so sorry we have to breeze through that because that's actually the most beneficial part is the practicing of going through the script. So next time I'll make sure that we really get to that. But I know I shared with y'all our issues that we're having today so far. So what are we going to do what we need to do is we need to give them another chance to show us that they can do this. And obviously I think since the test is on Tuesday, you guys probably already going to be doing that anyways. So when do you guys think you're going to be able to do the reteach?
Well, we have on the schedule to do the reteach on Wednesday.
After the test?
Yes.
Or we have a
unless
flex
we-
day, right?
We have a
flex day on
review
Friday.
day on Monday.
Monday.
Can you reteach then so they get?
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is if I want to do the reteach before the test though, to make sure that they
Then-
get another practice at it.
We could always push the test to Wednesday. and we could reteach Monday and review on Tuesday and test on Wednesday.
And I don't know if the reteach is going to need to take that long. You could do it in 10 minutes or less, just doing this one particular
Mhm.
problem. And then what we can do is, did you find any questions?
Questions on interpreting the CBA.
Okay.
But I did come up with another question that they could use to evaluate if they got it.
Okay, because I'd like to see, did it actually stick with them? Did they understand it? Because I feel like if it's a readiness standard, it's probably going to be on the test.
Mhm.
So with this, what you
could always do it tomorrow.
I mean, because tomorrow's a flex day, so isn't it? So that you could put that in there because y'all are just finishing up interpreting the remainder.
printed
That's what we
y'all's-
were thinking.
I was looking at
that you
y'all's
could
lesson
probably-
plans, or the LOs and DOLs, and it has Friday as a flex day. I know, I don't want to keep y'all.
Yeah, I
on.
know.
Oh, with the stations.
Okay.
Yes.
So I don't know if y'all want to do a quick reteach, and then maybe one of the review stations could be this to see if they, just to see if they understood it. Like glancing through some of those, going, okay, good. Some of these kids that I knew were mediums are getting it. You know what I mean? So here's some blank ones. I know there's not Spanish ones right here, but if you want to use that one to actually write out your thoughts on the camera, you can do that.
Okay.
You have.
But I want to follow up with you guys next week at our meeting, like at the PLC.
Okay.
I'd like to sit with you guys and just kind of ask y'all how it looked with your kids after that, how they were able to, did they do better? You know, did our
Okay.
lows do this, did our highs do this? But at least now we know who our lows are and where their strengths and where their struggles are. You know what I mean? And we've had some time to actually analyze this. So I'm sad that we're over because I feel like
Well,
we
and I
have
feel like
so
we-
much to go.
Yeah, I know there is, but I feel like with your
That's
lows,
okay.
even if they had the problem, and we talked about this when we were doing our DOLs, if they had the
Right.
problem, so they take that away, can they interpret that remainder with just the division problem completed for them?
Mhm.
Which, because if that's what we're focusing on, can they at least get that part?
Right.
Then I also was like, make sure that they're, if you have, when you're starting to count, like I automatically went, well, 8 times 10 is 80, so he's gonna have more than 10 cases.
Yeah.
Right.
So that reasonableness
Okay.
coming in.
Okay, so you guys sit out here so you don't get in trouble.
I know.
Sorry. Y'all won't get in trouble by me. I won't tell them y'all.
Well, my kids are with Miss Williams, so I won't get in trouble. But the other group is with Miss Lewis.
You might get in trouble.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
It was all Miss Fowler's
Tell her
fault.
it's my fault. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with you blaming me because the only person she'll complain to is me, and then I'll tell her, well, she's right. It was my fault. I want to be able to do this again. I feel like I don't know how y'all felt about it, but I like it because I get to know what y'all are doing as far as teaching it. You know what I mean? Not like
yes.
I'm not watching y'all, but I like to know that. I like to be part of that and seeing more about what the kids are learning and where our strengths are and where we can get help and, you know. So, I don't know. It's beneficial for me, definitely.
Awesome.
All right, you guys are awesome.
Love
Thank you so
y'all.
much for being part of this. I know it was hard.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take a chocolate, please.
Yes. Take it away. Yes, thank you.
Have a good day.